Thank you, Moshe. Okay, well, 8:59, a minute to go, and we've got Shruti here.
Hello, Shruti.
This is not the formal introduction, but yeah, just to say hi to my fellow co-presenter, and then we've got Nashad, our Academy Director, who's there as well. So yeah, I'll kick off now, and this is our third webinar here at Food Entrepreneurship Academy, and what our aim is for these webinars, or the whole idea behind this ongoing series, is really to provide information and insights into topics that might be or are relevant for home food entrepreneurs, startup food manufacturers, like really in that early stage, as well as others that are thinking about entering into this space of developing their own food products and how it might happen. So these particular presentations are all from the perspective of food manufacturing rather than consumer based. So this particular one is about protein sources, protein nutrition claims, and that follows on our first one, which is on food additives, and our second one, which was on the process to actually develop the food product. So what I want to say is that, like, to start with, there's while food scientists have such a broad understanding, such a broad knowledge, and it's kind of evidenced by the way that there are areas of expertise, but it's not uncommon for one person to handle so many different elements. But in this particular case, we've been fortunate to actually have the services, if you want to put it that way, of our visiting scholar in nutrition, who is Dr. Shruti Sharma, co-presenting our session today. So Shruti was originally trained as a food scientist, but has done a PhD in a public health nutrition area at the University of Newcastle, and in, I believe, some Indigenous public health nutrition kind of area. She can sort of maybe say a few words briefly on that when she takes over. But just to say that, while food scientists have such a broad knowledge, there are certainly really areas where the benefit of people with niche expertise and really detailed understanding is really important. And in this particular case, when we're talking about protein nutrition, and particularly from the nutrition perspective, as opposed to the perspective of scientific aspects or technology aspects, that's where such expertise is really important. So I'll hand over to Shruti, who will take us through the first stage, and then after that I'll continue with some other elements of our presentation. So Shruti, all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Philip, and thanks for and also bringing me in to meet so many food entrepreneurs. I really like this concept, and especially today's presentation is very much interesting to me, because it's so much to talk about health and nutrition aspects. So a little bit about, as kindly already explained by Philip, that I have done my bachelor's and master's in food science, and then slowly my career started shifting to, because I got interested in nutrition a lot. The reason being that I believe that for every food scientist, including me, if having the holistic and comprehensive understanding of nutrition and health aspects that is better for the environment, for the planet, and for an individual as well. So that saw my interest growing in this area. And in my PhD particularly, I work with on the diets of indigenous people. They are one of the most, for those who are not well aware about this particular population, they're one of the most vulnerable people on the earth, and their population is reducing drastically in the past few years. So now it's, before it was happening because of infectious disease, which we did not have the cure for, but now it's also happening because of the chronic illnesses. So today, in my today's presentations, I have briefly covered about chronic diseases, because once we start product development and we start talking about proteins, I think that it would be very good to have an understanding about how it can impact us on a broader level. So with this, I would just want to, where is my screen? Yes. Can you guys see if anyone can help me? Yes, perfect. Yeah. Before we go to chronic illnesses, as this one is very relevant, I just found a study on the Lancet about the latest global disease estimate that they have found out post-COVID-19 pandemic, that the interaction of COVID-19 is entirely different when we are at this stage where chronic diseases are at a continued global rise. So by this, what I mean to say is, imagine the situation wherein we were having an ideal diet, ideal lifestyle, ideal physical activity levels. How COVID-19 would have impacted us would have been completely different. Any situation, any pandemic, or any situation has a very high impact if we are vulnerable to it. So this is not just in the vulnerable populations about the high vulnerability of chronic diseases, but in the general population like us, that we are highly vulnerable to chronic illnesses now, and we are having a very high burden of, by chronic diseases, I mean diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, any kind of heart diseases for that matter. So since it is highly prevalent in our populations, the impact of COVID-19 has also been different and highly much more than what it would have been if we were living a very healthy lifestyle. So with this, I just want to explain a little bit about chronic diseases as well. I'm sure many of us know, because it's a very common phenomena that we talk about, that if we eat healthy, if we live, our physical activity levels are high, then we are living an ideal lifestyle. But how does it impact on a broader level, on a population level? So here, in this particular graph, if we can see, how has been the number of deaths, we can see that cardiovascular diseases has the highest, 17.9 million deaths in the, I cannot see myself because this particular window is prohibiting me. Yes, cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, which is also related to diet, what we are going to talk about today, is one of the top leading causes today in the globally. So this is a very important issue right now across the globe, how to target to reduce such conditions, which is leading to diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. Now, diet is a very important it plays a critical role in causing these illnesses or the prevalence of these risk factors, which causes chronic diseases. When we talk about diabetes or when we talk about cardiovascular diseases, there are early risk factors as well. For example, chronic diseases could be visible in people of elder age. For example, if they reach 60s or 70s, it could be very visible in those people, and you can get the data. But in early age, like in adolescent or young age people, chronic diseases in terms of like diabetes, CVD, might not be that much visible because it has not yet reached to that stage. However, we can keep a track by seeing how they are doing in terms of risk factors. Here I've mentioned about obesity. It's not just obesity, even the low body weight can also be a very important risk factor for the chronic diseases. But obesity is also very common in the highly developed nations. High blood pressure, all these early risk factors can contribute heavily to dictate how we are going to be in terms of chronic diseases later in our life. Chronic diseases, once they were thought that it is only the problem of developed nations, and since middle income countries and low income countries are not going to get affected with it, it was not the risk factors and chronic disease itself were not that prevalent in low income countries, but it's not the case now. Even in low income countries and middle income countries, it's growing at a very concerning rate. So across the globe, it's a very major concern. In this particular, I'm not sure if you're able to see the graph. It might be very small in small words, like font. But in this particular, I have included two graphs. The one which is having the leading causes of death globally, and the one which is having a leading causes of death in low-income countries. If you see the leading causes of death globally, you would see that heart disease has taken already the top place. So it's no more the infectious disease, which we cannot control or which we do not have any cure for, but heart disease, it's very much related to our lifestyle, which is taking the topmost place. And if you see the second graph, which is about low income countries, you would see that heart disease has already taken the third place. So it's even now equally concerning for the low income countries, because the non-communicable diseases are taking the topmost places, which earlier was mostly about communicable diseases. Similarly, for when related to my PhD, when I was doing in related to indigenous populations, I studied the communicable and non-communicable diseases in vulnerable populations, and I found there as well that traditionally they were very healthy. Even our general population traditionally, when we were on traditional foods, we were very healthy. But as the time has passed and our lifestyle has changed, the chronic diseases, the communicable diseases are getting at a much faster, higher rate than the non-communicable diseases are getting at a much higher rate than the communicable diseases. So that's concerning. If you see closely that tuberculosis, HIV is still there in the list, but they are getting down, and something which is related to the diet and lifestyle is going up. So with this particular, I just want to give you the perspective that how important it is to, solve our diet issues, solve our, equally for the food scientists to make such choices and to take such decisions to give the world better food options. And because the general population might not be aware about all this, about what they should be eating, what they should not be eating. Mostly the consumers want convenience foods today. They are going for processed foods because it's much tastier than the bland and healthy foods. So taste is also one issue. Convenience is also one issue. How to take care of everything, still thinking about the health of the broader population, is something which I want to give the thought today. Let us come to protein, because the protein is the theme of today's webinar, and protein is my favorite because we have, as you all know, we have so many composition, food composition, as in carbohydrates, protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. But protein is one of the very important ones as well, and how it impacts that we are going to talk about today. I'm sure Philip would be talking more about the protein, how it affects and what are the quality and what are the different amino acids in protein. But on general level, I want to bring you this, that definitely it's a building block. So the strength and everything, for everything, protein is so important for growth and development. Now, there is a not recent study I think I have taken. I'm very interested in the old studies as well, because they were the landmark studies, and they brought the thought then, and then everybody started to following up on those studies. So this was a very big study in which 80,000 women were involved, aged 34 to 59. It was called nurse study report, something like that. And it was a 14 years study follow-up, in which follow-ups were done. Very few studies involve those many years, like like more than a decade or something, because it's very difficult to do follow-ups in anything in which diet is involved. So very precious studies like this. And they found that protein intake and heart disease, definitely protein intake had a beneficial effect on the heart disease. And it's not just this, but there are 25 reports of cross-section analysis and one meta-analysis, which is quite recent, also establishes that how protein intake and reducing the heart disease or having an positive effect on the heart disease can go hand in hand. So although it's a very complex relationship, and there is no like conclusive evidence, but yes, things are going in this direction, wherein there is a very strong correlation between protein intake and cardiovascular heart disease, and hence even I believe that yes, if have a good effect on our long-term chronic illness status, then definitely protein is something which we should be looking at very closely. Here, I am going to talk about a little bit about which will be detailed by Philip later. There could be various sources, but this particular slide tells about the how the food has to be seen in entirety. We talk about carbohydrates, we talk about everything separately, but when we talk about food, it also not just the carbohydrate, but it's also proteins, fats, and everything that comes together in that package when we are eating something. For example, it could be rice, it could be like processed meat, which we buy from convenience stores, or it could be anything for that matter, but it comes in a package. So we have to see everything in entirety. When we talk about sources of protein, it could be the basic sources are two, like from animal sources and plant sources. But then what is coming with the protein source with the protein from the plant source, or what is coming with the protein from the animal source. So there are so many, of course, we all know animal sources, like it could be chicken, beef, and everything which is having the protein in it, and highly like egg, highly concentrated sources of protein. But then there is studies which say a lot about the saturated fats that also comes with the animal protein. And there are also studies, I think this one was a rodent study, wherein it is established that animal protein intakes, they are causing hypercholesterolemia and atherosclerosis compared with the intake of vegetable proteins. This could be only one study, but then animal foods are also associated with, highly, I think, blood pressure and all, which I have covered later. But when we compare the animal proteins and the vegetable protein, the studies that I find is that okay, there might not be as much studies on the chronic disease level. As I mentioned, that it's very difficult to measure and do the studies on those levels. But if we see on the early risk factor levels of the chronic diseases, which could be blood pressure, which could be weight, or which could be sugar, you would see that there are studies which would say that, okay, animal protein, of course, the blame is to go for the saturated fats, is relating and is having associations with the early risk factors such as sugar or blood pressure. In contrast, if you see, there was one study also which used the soybean as the source, and it found out that it reduced the serum cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. Now how is cholesterol related? It's related to the atherosclerosis, related to the heart diseases. So if we can have a good check on our cholesterol, for example, both LDL and HDL, then definitely it would be for us to prevent having chronic diseases in the later life will be very good. So now I just want to talk about the plant protein and the benefits which has been established for this particular protein source. Is, as you can see, I've mentioned about American Diabetes Association, which included legumes. This is again related. Legumes is my favorite because when I was working in my PhD, I found that I was also studying the dietary habits of Australian indigenous population and the dietary habits of Indian indigenous population. And I found it closely that they are including legumes a lot in their, and they have a variety of legumes. It could, like, I don't even remember how many, but maybe 20 or 24 different types of legumes, cowpeas, chickpeas, and so many to which were giving their energy, and they were very physically active. So that was also reflected in in their appearance. They were highly lower weight. I would not say it was perfect because I'm advocating that okay, protein is good for the body, but then there is in lower countries there is another problem of malnutrition and not getting enough other macronutrients as such. So we are not talking about this, but what I'm trying to say here is there are different sources of legumes which I was amazed to see in the traditional knowledge. And as we can see here, that for against diabetes, as diabetes superfoods, legumes has been included, and there could be several reasons behind it. They are very low at saturated fat. So while I was talking before about animal foods, that they come with a lot of saturated fat, and even if you advocate that okay, there is little bit of protein in plant protein, but there is more in animal food. But then if you're having only less of animal food, you are getting more of saturated fats also comparatively. Rather, I would increase the legume concentration in my food and include other sources, which would give me a good balance. And I would do that. Coming back to the legumes as such, it is very good. Also, studies are saying that it is good in managing the blood sugar levels, and it is also very rich in protein, as definitely that we are talking about today. And other than protein, what is also good in legumes is the fiber. So very good in terms of weight management and in terms of the sedentary lifestyle that we are living today. Fiber, increasing the fiber intake and together with the physical activity levels, increasing the physical activity levels is so important if anybody wants to work on the weight management aspects. So I'm not sure how this could be, that is definitely Philip is going to talk later about claims and all, but there is so much of scientific evidence to guide us in terms of making the right choices for product development and making the right even guiding the consumers towards making a better healthy choices. There is so much that we can explore and we can utilize. As we can see here, 2018, very recently, there was a systematic review and a meta-analysis. So there are so many 24 observation studies included. And they also found that beans, they included two. So this is also very important, that how we mix and combine good plant sources to make a more effective choice. So they included beans and nuts together, and there was a it was linked to reducing the risk of heart disease. It is also, like I have mentioned before, that how fiber can help together with the protein. So this combination, protein and fiber, is a very great combination for making directing towards staying like it can help you with the satiety It will not make you hungry for longer, and that is ultimately, making you active and making you more like weight related to weight. Also, it could be having benefits. So this is a great combination, protein plus fiber, what we could be utilizing as well. And plant sources, they are not just rich in protein, fiber, but they're also very rich in antioxidants. Now, antioxidants are such a great source, which are primarily be coming from the plant sources, which have been established for their great health benefits. Like, for example, polyphenols, like if you see fruits and all, everything has color. Those are very high in polyphenols, but everything plant sources has certain amount of antioxidants, which could be very effective in dealing with the chronic diseases later also. I've mentioned here oxidative stress because in all the chronic diseases later or even early risk factors, oxidative stress is when caused is causing it more to happen for the chronic diseases. So if controlled oxidative stress is controlled, the further processes which are happening will also be controlled. So it's related to even for skin benefits, even for it's not just like for skin also, antioxidants could be utilized very appropriately. So along with the plant protein, the combination which is coming with the protein through plant sources, if seen very careful and if observed very careful, there could be several things which is coming from from the same source in terms of health benefits. The other one which I've included a study wherein 121 people were involved, and they were seeing about type 2 diabetes, which is also diet related. Diet is an important factor over there also. They were eating 1 cup of legumes daily for 3 weeks, and they were able to maintain their blood sugar and blood pressure compared to those who were not including legumes in their diets. So this one also says blood pressure and blood sugar, diabetes are very much talked about right now for the protein sources which is coming from plant source. And the other one, which is a meta-analysis from Canadian Medical Association Journal, in which they were having 130 grams of pulses, which included beans, peas, chickpeas, or lentils. As you can see, there could be so many diverse type of plant protein sources. They had it for 6 weeks, and again, it had a benefit of LDL, which is a cholesterol-related benefit, and accordingly, they also reduced the risk of cardiovascular disease. So this was the health benefit of the plant protein part. And this one is the source is from Harvard Chan School of Public Health, which are a major source of information in this particular area related to health, nutrition from the food sources. And they have included all the sources, plant protein, not all, I would not say all, but many sources from the plant, which anyone could be using it. I'm not sure how much this kind of knowledge has been utilized in the product development process, but there is a breadth of information available on different types of protein sources, which protein sources from plants. So as you can see, it could be legumes, it could be nut and seeds, whole grains, others. Now in vegetarian diet, it is very common to include different foods. It's uncommon to just have grains. For example, it's very uncommon to have just rice or just oats. It is very common to have oats. It's very common to have something from lentils. It's very common to have also asparagus or corn. So it would be a combination, and hence it would that is established that protein, then it gives a very complete everything, vitamins, minerals, carbs, and fats, and everything which is needed for a complete diet. It gives you in entirety. I would also request if anyone wants to visit this source, because it's a very credible source and very rich of information in terms of how we can, because I'm sure many people in this group are very interested in making new products. So this particular is giving so many recipes and in how we can use and different different food to come together to give a very good food product. It has a many recipes, including the plant protein sources, and using them. So very good guide. And this is again from Harvard Chan School of Public Health. I am especially emphasizing because yes, we believe our traditional knowledge, but we also believe something which is proven scientifically and in the recent times. So as you can see, they have clearly mentioned about legumes, and legumes is being talked about so much because it doesn't have, virtually doesn't have any saturated fat. As you can see, they are comparing it against beef. They are how much protein it is offering and how much proteins legumes are offering, but there is no fiber in beef, and there is 11 grams of saturated fat, and how legumes are only protein and only fiber. So this is, and of course along with the vitamins and minerals, that is again a very good thing which is coming along with the plant protein. And how it is, I'm very interested to also mention about the overall impact on our environment, about how animal products are making not a very good scene for our environment and planet, so in terms of GHG gas emissions. So what we can do is in terms of environmental sustainability as well. And yes, I think this is my last slide. There has been a lot of debate about animal protein being complete and plant foods not being complete in terms of protein. But there is, yes, amino acid biology, they are actually talking about essential amino acids, how many we have and not have. I think Philip would take on that part. But there is one very important message that from this, as I mentioned earlier, that it's not only the protein which is coming from the plant source or the animal source. It's a lot many other things which is coming. And when you combine, you don't eat one thing, just one thing in the vegetarian source, but when you combine different things together, it makes it complete. So this particular source, if you want to go, it's very clearly mentioning about and how we should look at the plant proteins, rather not compare it. We should not be comparing it. Everything has its own good benefits, like animal sources and food sources, but then developing a food product which is of better health, we should be knowing about the individual ingredients and then how we combine them together to give a better product. So I think that was it. I hope I added even a little bit of knowledge today. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and it's to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Shruti. It was really insightful, and I think the drawing of the links between product development and nutrition is something that certainly a lot more attention needs to be paid to, because of the elements or the responsibility, I suppose, that food scientists and that people that are bringing new food products into the world can actually have in terms of guiding the future directions of the health and well-being of the world, really. So I think that's really insightful, and especially the scientific justifications and those sort of references that you use just really show the importance, the underlying importance of proteins and of good nutrition in having a future world population that's actually in a different place to where we are now, in a better space and a better place. And I think, as we're in the fortunate position that as food scientists or food entrepreneurs, people that are doing this kind of work, we can actually make those differences. We can actually make things happen and drive that, and that's such a responsible position and such a great position to be in, because we can actually directly make that contribution to people and to the community and to the whole just to society in general. Okay, now you haven't stop sharing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry
good,
about
good,
that.
good. Nah, that's all right.
Mark?
Yeah, okay. So what will happen now, I'll go through a few slides from my side, and then then I'll ask Naushad, our Academy Director, to take us through any final comments, and then we can ask for any particular questions from anyone. So what? Yep. So Shruti had given a very good overview from the nutrition perspective, the importance of nutrition and the background of the current state of global health, really global public health, and where we are now, really where we don't want to end up, and how we can actually divert that and drive things in a different direction. And as I keep saying, that's one of the benefits of developing food products, because we can actually have a direct influence on that, and it's such a great way to contribute to society and change the world and those sorts of things, really. So what I want to start with is some real basic stuff, I suppose, just to ensure that we all know the fundamentals or foundations. And so first question is what actually are proteins? And a lot of the time when we're talking about protein foods, people tend to think about fitness, building muscle, gym goers and bodybuilders and those sorts of things. And yeah, of course, muscle proteins and building muscles and those sorts of elements are extremely critical, not only, in everyday life. We need to, how many muscles do we have? And, we're moving those all the time, even when sleeping, of course, with breathing and those sorts of things. But in this slide, I just want to draw attention to all the different proteins, all the types of proteins, all the diversity of proteins, really, in our body, and the different types of physiological functions that they do, and therefore the importance, the responsibility we have to our own body to ensuring that our protein content, although not only our protein content, as I'll get to in subsequent slides, but broadly speaking, our protein content, dietary intake of protein is at a level which is going to support all these anatomical and physiological functions of the body. So apart from muscles and our general movement, there's a lot of talk today about collagen, and you can see that collagen has such a so many functions, so many uses in so many different parts of the body. Some real basic elements, but others which a lot of people take collagen products for now tend to be aesthetic as well. So if we move down to the bottom right hand corner, we've got a diagram which is meant to show immune response to, in this case, we're all in the pandemic, so to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So the immune response, antibodies, immunoglobulins, which are the different immunoglobulin classes, and all the other cells that take part in the immune response are proteins. And there's, they're, really, one could say, many of these are a life and death thing, but your immune response is, obviously very, very key and very central to that. And that's, such an important function of proteins in the body. But then hemoglobin, if we don't get the oxygen we need, which is carried by hemoglobin in our erythrocytes or red blood cells, then, well, we're not going to be around for very, very long. So, the functions of hemoglobin are, undeniably fundamental to not just our existence, but animal existence, I suppose, if you want to, think broadly. And then the last one there is salivary amylase. If we, go to a specific nutrition or digestion, gastroenterological example, where the first stage of nutrition, digestion, the first stage of digestion actually takes place in the mouth with that particular enzyme. So, and that's a protein. Enzyme's a protein. So that's just a slide which is to show the diversity of what proteins actually do in the body, and the absolutely critical importance it is to ensure your protein dietary intake. So here's some real basic and fundamental biochemistry, just for an understanding, scientific understanding really of the different levels of protein structure. Primary protein structure is of most relevance, really, because we're talking about amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, and the individual amino acids so-called strung together like beads in a particular sequence is the primary structure of a protein. So protein structure at its most fundamental level is the different types of amino acids that are in a specific sequence, and that's what's most important from a nutrition perspective. Then the others are less important, but just to less important from our particular perspective and context here. But just to put it into perspective, we've got the way those amino acids fold, which gives a secondary protein structure. Then those alpha helices and beta plated sheets, the way they fold again is the tertiary structure. And then there are some really large proteins which form together as different subunits into a much larger protein, which when those come together, those subunits, and that is what's called the quaternary protein structure. But the most important thing to get out of this slide is that the most fundamental elements of proteins are the amino acids and the types of amino acids that are linked together. In this slide here, we have a very generic overview of meat as the so-called traditional protein source, if you want to put it that way. But as Shruti had mentioned, for a long period of time before modern practices of consumption, food manufacturing, food distribution, all those sorts of things, the so-called traditional sources were more plant-based. But what we gather nowadays as sort of normal or typical in terms of protein content are these meat sources. And so this is a slide to give you just an overview of the different types of meat and an understanding of the context of what the general levels of protein are in those, like protein overall and overall protein content. Now, in comparison, these are vegan protein sources, just to put it into context of meat and different vegan protein sources. So we've got some of them are pretty high. Peanut butter and Aldi is a supermarket here in Australia, where this particular bread that they have is a higher protein bread, and it's got super low carbohydrate content, and then we've got pumpkin seeds, and then other seeds and nuts have a similar overall protein level to meat. So really, in this particular case, if you combine, basically you have a peanut butter sandwich with this Aldi bread, then you're then that's really particularly nutritious indeed. Low carb, super high protein, and is really good on a keto diet. So Shruti had briefly gone into the types of vegan or different types of plant-based protein sources. So and this you can see is just out of a paper this year, in fact, out of a Food Hydrocolloids article. I've got it's so new, in fact, that they don't even have page numbers. So it's just got the DOI URL. That's the only identifier at the moment. But this diagram is to give even more of an overview of the different types of plant-based protein sources that you could use in your manufactured products. So as ingredients in all kinds of different ways. And one of the things to think about, I think, that not only is there different protein concentration in these, of course there's different amino acid profiles, which I'll get to, but they also have different types of, potentially different types of physical functionality as well. And of course they have different types of physiological functionality with regard to different bioactivities and those sorts of things. But the interesting thing is that you could include different types of these plant-based proteins, not only for nutrition, but for the type of texture or mouthfeel or some other physical property in the food product as well. And so that's another perspective, another element to think about when coming at developing food products, that one particular ingredient can serve multiple functions or multiple purposes in the product. So here, revisiting amino acids, and we've introduced the concept or the idea that the most fundamental basic parts of proteins are amino acids. And so what I want to do in this slide is really to go on from that and say that yes, while those are the building blocks of proteins, what is even more important is what are those amino acids, and in particular, are they essential or non-essential? So that's a particularly, a really important concept, because if you look at what the definition is, we've got non-essential amino acids which can be created, can be synthesized in our body, whereas essential amino acids are those that can't be. So we can't produce those in our body, and therefore we must take those in from external, therefore dietary sources. So that's why it's not just, it's what's the best way of putting this? It's more important to think about the types of proteins and their amino acid content, and particular the types of essential amino acids in particular proteins when you're developing a food product, rather than just saying or just going for the claim that I've got my food is a good source of protein. It's rich in, depending on the terminology, it's a rich source of protein. But if that particular protein, for example, is rich in non-essential amino acids, then it's not as valuable as a food that is got a higher proportion of essential amino acids. Because when you think about it, what just bluntly speaking, what's the point of eating a food that has a lot of non-essential amino acids compared to eating one which has a lot of essential amino acids which you actually need to take in your body, right? Because you can't produce those. So then down the bottom is just another further example of some other plant-based protein sources, but in this case, plant-based essential amino acid sources. So just to show that there are all these different sources of plant-based sources of essential amino acids. Now, in this table here, what we want to do is take that even further. So we've said that protein content per se is not absolutely, the be-all and end-all. What's more important is whether is the amino acid profile of a particular product, and in particular, the proportion of essential amino acids, which are of most use to people in the context of human nutrition. But I want to extend that and take that a bit further and say that, okay, if these are the essential amino acids, these are the different stages of life. And who are you actually targeting with the product that you're developing? And does your product match your target audience, your target, not audience, your target demographic, right? So that's an absolutely, essential, really. It's just so important, because then, you could say if you're developing a toddler-based product, and you therefore looked at the toddler column there, then you can confidently market to mothers of toddlers and really be confident in saying, look, my product has got this, and that amino acid. It's not just rich in protein, but it's got these particular amino acids at these particular concentrations, which your child needs at their particular stage of development. And our product produces that. And we've got the science to back that up. We've got the analysis to show that our product actually includes those, and therefore that's how, really, that's our product's point of difference compared to, maybe others that don't really go into showing that, it's really hits these protein nutrition criteria. Now, a bit of a word on protein quality. So protein quality is something that's been changing over the years, and not protein quality, but the understanding of it, I suppose, or the context of it, or how it's seen, and especially how it's measured. And when I say that, I'm particularly referring to the World Health Organization, and as the sort of peak body for everything that's health related. Of course, as new information comes to hand, as perspectives shift, as context shifts as well, then the World Health Organization's stance on different important elements will also change, as has their understanding or their perspective, I suppose, on what is actually quality protein, because it's rather I was going to say perplexing, but I suppose just downright confusing, really, if you start looking online, even if you start looking in the scientific and medical literature, as to what is a quality protein. And this is just in the scientific and medical literature, not taking into account all the non-professional people that are talking about all these sorts of topics in their own personal blogs and selling their own self-help books and all this sort of thing, which really just add to the confusion and take distraction away from the true debate. But what I with this particular book here, what I wanted to highlight is really the thought now that combining different sorts of proteins in a plant-based diet is not really that important, not as important as it was once thought, because there was this school of thought that, okay, to get a so-called complete protein, complete quality protein, and even that is a context or a concept which is different depending on the concept that you're coming from, and the different perspectives now that people use to measure protein quality are potentially out of date anyway. So what this is trying to show is that it's more important to have an overall quality diet, an overall solid nutritious diet. But if most of or all of your protein is from a plant-based source, then you would have to have an increased overall content of plant-based protein, just from the perspective of, or for the purpose of the lower bioavailability or digestibility of plant-based proteins. So really, that's sort of the stance on that. That if you have a diverse diet, a diverse protein diet, but if most of your sources are from plant, then just increase the amount. Really, that's basically what this is getting at. And yeah, so the next few slides are really to go through the different standards in briefly over a bit of an overview, just to give you an understanding of how to approach claims in different jurisdictions around the world, nutrition claims, health claims with regard to protein. So by and large, though, it's all about the amount of protein that you have, either in a particular quantity of the food or as a particular proportion of the energy, to overall energy of that food, or as a proportion of the overall protein that is important for that particular demographic. So that's kind of the concept, or that's kind of the thinking, which is the common theme, which has a slightly different take on it, if you want to put it that way, depending on which country, which standard. So with FSANs here in Australia and New Zealand, we have at least 5 grams per serving, which what is a serving? Well, that's leaves this very much open to not sort of interpretation, but you can modify the amount that you can include a claim just by increasing the serving size, really, basically. And you can see the good source there is 10 grams. So if you can increase your serving size so that you've got 10 grams, even though the proportion is the same, well, then you've got a claim for good source of protein there. And so that's nutrition. But as far as health goes, there are some of the health claims down on the left there, which are allowed within the FSAN standard in Australia and New Zealand. Now, with the FDA in the US, this is all based on the DV, daily value for protein, which is 50 grams, and they have this RACC concept, which again, there's the high in protein, the good source of protein, which all is in reference to those measures. And I'm going to be going through these a bit quicker because it really just depends, of course, where you're marketing your product for. And these are the things that we can advise on and really go into a lot of detail when developing your product to make sure that you hit these particular nutrition or health claims criteria, depending on the particular country. But this is just to show that it's all, it's similar but slightly different right across the board. So with the in India, there will theirs is like I said, slightly different but similar, and you've got the basis of amount percentage based on energy there. Whereas in the EU, we've got a source of protein. And just remember too that when you're looking at different products in different parts of the world, the terminologies are going to be different as well. So, we've got source, good source, high protein, and all these other different types of terminologies, which might mean the same thing or might mean slightly different things, or might mean, or it might be just a slightly different way of measuring, which could be the same or almost the same sort of thing. So it's so I guess what I'm trying to get at is that there are there's an overall concept and theme, but there are really pretty specific types of technicalities, I suppose, that you could think of it as. So we've got source of protein in the EU as being 12%, 20% for high protein, and the last example one I've got here is Singapore, where there's all these different types of nutrition claims: source, good source, high, rich, and some really specific, and they call them guidelines here, per like on a percentage basis. But then also there are some different measures there on a per energy basis as well. So I think that's the last slide. So really, with this session here, what we wanted to show was that protein is so important. We have as being in the food development game, we have such a important role to play in guiding public health, nutrition, and the health of the world going forward, and that there are some pretty specific but similar concepts right across the world in terms of the types of claims that you can put on your product, depending on which country. And the next session, what we're going to be doing, our next session is something a bit different. And so this is coming up here, 12 o'clock in Australian Eastern Daylight Time, or 1700 Pacific, which we're calling Ask a Food Scientist. So we're just having a session of not delivering anything, not a particular theme, but we're just going to be here and just to have a general informal discussion. And if anyone you know has any questions about anything, even if it's specific about a specific product that you've got in mind, some specific business advice, something pretty general, then come along, ask, and we shall answer. Okay, so with that, I'll stop sharing, hand over to Naushad for any final comments and thoughts. And thanks very much. Naushad.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Dr. Shruti. Thank you very much. It was actually very great insights on on protein sources, difference just between the animal protein and the plant-based protein. The one really I liked was I think Dr. Shruti mentioned that as per the Canadian in research, they had 130 grams of pulses. If you consume for 6 weeks, can slash your cholesterol level by 5%. That's actually a lot, right? So I mean, and that's those sort of insights. I mean, we sort of work with a lot of our clients as well, and that's needed. We have seen a big influx of like, new products, what we develop going from animal protein to the plant-based. So we are going in a right direction again, and they're all like, they're not bland, they're all tasty, like, much better consumer preference these days. So we are moving towards that world, like, and it's also going to help the more on the sustainability issue. So yeah, that was really great. Another big great insight was when Philip, you mentioned about like, the list of all the plant proteins, which was like, spirulina, oatmeal, and like, beans, chia seeds, and they all had like, 20, they all have like essential amino acids, which is needed. Generally makes up 35% of the essential amino acids in our muscles. So I think those sort of ingredients are very important on a daily consumption level. And we are seeing a lot of products in the supermarket using those ingredients now these days. So at the end, like, it's gonna be very vital, and we're gonna have a different world probably in next 5 to 10 years. With this all new food entrepreneurs getting into it and understanding the general consumer health and like, how we can make that better. So I think it was really good insight, and thank you both very much. It was a great presentation, and I would also like to thank all the attendees. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really great having you guys on. The next one, I will talk more on the next webinar, which is just ask a food scientist. It's a great idea. We are happy to take any questions. So if like, what I would recommend, if you have any specific question which you want to ask, feel free to ask us a bit earlier as well, because we are doing an impromptu session, so you can ask over there on the day as well. But yeah, any early questions we are more than happy to take on board. Thank you.
But apart from that, any right now, yeah.
Yes.
If anyone has any particular thoughts, comments, questions, insights into what I said or what Shruti said, yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and please ask.
If there's any questions, please ask. If not, the last thing I would like to add would be the 2 links what Dr. Shruti mentioned in her presentation are in the actual chat box. So if anybody wants to access that, please feel free to do that. Thank you. Have you got any words, Philip?
No, I guess not. Unless anyone wants to speak up and say something, then if not, well, Shruti, anything you want to say?
Yes.
Yeah, everything good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, okay. Well, if that's...
yeah, just a quick thing. If anyone interested in any part of my slide, I can share with you. I think I have done it already. If anyone interested in any part of my slides or to see further.
Yep. Okay. Well,
thanks for the presentations. I thought they were super insightful. Yeah, it was really cool to see Shruti talk about the trajectory of protein and kind of how we fit in terms of our consumer demands and the bigger picture. So that was great to see.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Andrea, for your comment, and thanks, yeah, for joining in all the way from Los Angeles. And it was, yeah, great to have people here from different parts of the world, and yeah, great session. So look forward to the next one, and yeah, thanks again for being part of this session, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Take care then. Have a great
Thank you.
Great evening and weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.